When the troops boarded the Walker, they left from West Coast ports like Tacoma, Washington, or San Diego, or San Francisco and Oakland, California. They would be taken by train many times, and they would board the ship, and some of these kids, and they were kids who served for the most part, had never seen a ship before, had never even been on a rowboat. And no sooner had they gotten on the ship, and the ship slipped under the Golden Gate Bridge and headed out into the Pacific Ocean, they were already seasick. And it became a big problem for most of them because once one person got seasick, they were all seasick. And seasickness was a big problem for a lot of the troops during their voyage to Vietnam.
As executive officer, I was also special services officer, I was also crypto officer, and quite a few other hats that I wore. We provided a lot of things to keep the troops occupied. We had on board a number of musical instruments and enough to gather a band together. We had clarinets, we had guitars, we had 15 or 20 different musical instruments, and they would get together a band from all the troops. They'd advertise in the ship's newspaper, and they go up and set up on one of the hatches on deck and play. And the troops would gather around, and you'd find some new players that they want to get up and do it too. And if the weather was bad, they would do it down in this large rec room. And this is just part of the special services. We did our best to keep the troops entertained and things to keep them from getting into trouble.
One of the activities on the ship was card playing. Cards were actually distributed by the ship's officers to the men to keep them occupied. And they gambled. They weren't supposed to gamble, but as they said, what were they going to do? Send us to Vietnam? Fire drills were held regularly aboard the ship. This accomplished a number of things. One, fire on a ship is very dangerous. You need to know how to get to a boat station so that you can abandon the ship if necessary. But it also for these young kids who were on the ship for as many as 23 days, it broke the boredom, the tedium of being on that ship and being confined in those berthing units down below and not having really much to do. So it gave them an opportunity to get out into some fresh air, don an orange life vest. And even though you're milling around, you're at least doing something different. You're seeing the sea, you're being with your buddies, you're experiencing how you're supposed to abandon the ship. You're watching how men are actually removed on stretchers if necessary. These are things that are important to know during the voyage, but it broke up the boredom. And almost everybody that we've interviewed said the trip was terribly boring. That is, until you got closer to Vietnam.
We had dropped off a load of troops in Vietnam, pulled into Yokosuka, Japan for a short refueling, and we were headed back to the States on a Great Northern route when a message came in over the radio of a ship in distress, sinking. We arrived at the scene on February the 1st, 1966. And there were a number of ships in the area, and there were Coast Guard planes flying overhead. And we arrived there early in the morning, before daylight. The Coast Guard planes were dropping life rafts. They had dropped a number of these that were lost because the ship was powerless, it could not maneuver to get these rafts. And we were able to intercept these life rafts and then maneuver close enough to the rock port that a line throwing gun could be fired over to them. Then they would load it up with the men and turn loose from the ship and drift downwind, and the master, Mortensen, would maneuver the walker. We would intercept them, pull them alongside, throw them a line, and they were coming up a ladder on the side of the ship. Now, we have a steel boarding ladder that can be lowered to the side of the ship when you have a stable surface to work from, such as a dock or a barge or something like that. But the swells were such that the safest way for them to come on board the ship was to come up a wooden ladder that's held together with ropes. And even then, they had some difficulty. This was an operation that went on all day long. And the ship was gradually going down. The water was ahead of the pumps, and as you watch in the video, you can see her settling by the stern. It was late in the afternoon before we had the last crew member safely on board. The last crew member to arrive was appropriately the captain of the Rockport. But we got all of them safely on board. They were all sent down to our hospital, and we checked everything out with them. We gave them clothes, and after the rescue the next day, when they knew their ship was now gone and that they were safe, we gathered them all together on the deck, and I shot a movie of all of the crew members on board ship, so we saved 28 lives. Being involved in a troop ship, hauling troops to Vietnam, and you wonder how many of them are not going to be coming back, to save 28 lives was satisfying to the entire ship. When I was on board the Walker, I still have the cap that I was wearing. I kept it over 40 years. Don't ask me why. I just did. And this is a hat that I was wearing when I was shooting the film of the ship going down. It shows a little wear, but it's still a usable hat.